Chapter 3, London. It's almost 10 o'clock in the morning, local time. I'm in a pub in Holborn, with a large coffee and a phone book in front of me. Yesterday, when the train got in, I had scurried to the underground without a backward glance. I'd had a feeling that several people were seeking me out in the crowd, but I don't know if it was my paranoia at work or if Ava really did have henchmen ready on the station platform to intercept the record. Whatever the case, I'd managed to jump onto a train without confrontation. Considering the circumstances, it was probably risky to stay close to the station, so I made the journey to a little hotel that I'd stayed in for a conference organized by my employers at the bank last spring. After my difficult day, which had ended with me crossing London, constantly checking over my shoulder to be sure I wasn't being followed, I decided to get an early night. Which is why I find myself at a relatively early hour making a list of the city's record stores, which with the hope that someone will be able to help me find Ulysses trail again. I took a mouthful of my cooling coffee, glancing at my handbag. The room that I'd been booked didn't have a safe, so I brought the record with me, not daring to trust it to the reception desk. I turned the page of the phone book, continuing my selection. To avoid spending too much time traveling, I tried to restrict myself to the Mayfair and Covent Garden areas, which have the advantage of being central and being part of the supposedly trendy districts. There's no point making a list as long as my arm. 3 well-chosen record stores should be enough for me to find the answers to my questions. And if none of them can help me, I'm pretty sure that at least one of them will be able to point me in the direction of a colleague who may know more. Record store owners are like big cats. Each one has their own hunting ground, but they often quench their thirst at the same watering hole. Of course, I began by checking the address of Alan O'Reilly's store, Patricia's friend. His store, Yard Sale Records, is on Carnaby Street. The road is well known for being crammed with clothes and thrift stores. I should be able to buy myself a few clothes there without breaking the bank. With the disappearance of my case, I've had to resign myself to wearing yesterday's clothes, which have already been through the clammy filth of the subways of two cities, and the train journey, all of which prompt me to start the day with a bit of shopping. I confess, when I got up this morning after the setback, giving up on my search and going back to Bordeaux certainly crossed my mind. But I quickly changed my mind. After all, my apartment had been searched before I left. If I give up now, it's only a matter of time before someone manages to steal the record from me. And I need to know what's happened to Ulysses. Not to mention that I still intend to learn how to use the record to return to my reality. Even if the people that I've spoken to up to now haven't given me much hope of success in that particular venture. I turn back to the phone book. I add Strawberry Fields Record Store to my list. The store claims to be the oldest and most psychedelic in the city since 1966. In other words, since the great days of swingin' London. Considering the age of the store, I imagine there's a strong possibility that Ulysses has been there. And to finish, a little further away, in Mayfair, Sidecar Vinyls is specialized in second-hand records with an advert that says True Rock and Roll Garage and 60s. I gulp down the rest of my coffee, pay the bill at the bar, as is customary this side of the channel. Then I head west along New Oxford Street. The sky is overcast, but not threatening rain. You're in London. I decide a walk will do me good, especially as Carnaby Street is only half an hour away on foot, as far as I recall. On the way, I stop at a Marks and Spencer that I come across. To deal with my most pressing needs, I buy a small travel bag and throw in some toiletries, underwear, and a few pairs of warm tights to combat the hostile chill of the British fall. With the prices in mind, I try to stick to the strictly necessary. Even if theoretically this London escapade will be erased when I listen to the record again, it would be annoying to run short of funds before that. quarter of an hour later, I'm in Carnaby Street. I begin, as planned, by visiting a few thrift stores. Recreating a wardrobe from nothing, even a basic one, seems like an almost impossible task which could easily take all day, so I try not to get distracted and focus on the basics. So I begin with a short, black jacket to help me face the London climate, which I match with a pale gray woolen skirt, and a beige and white striped sailor top. I complete my new wardrobe with a few tops that can be worn anywhere, some black pants, another short skirt, and a slightly longer one. That should be enough for a few days. And if my wanderings take me to another country again, at least I'll be traveling light. I use the store fitting room to change and slip my dirty clothes into a pocket of my travel bag. Instantly, I feel much better with clean clothes. I look at the time, it's almost midday. I decide that I've spent enough time on provisions, it's time to focus on my main reason for coming here. When I get to yard sale records, the store is plunged in darkness. A notice taped on the door tells me in handwritten capital letters, "Won't open until late, come back later, sorry not sorry, Alan." Too bad, I'll just have to come back later. Maybe Patricia's friend will have decided to get out of bed by then. Strawberry fields? Stuck between a bookstore and a pub, a faded old wooded facade of Strawberry Fields record store exudes character. The store is very well located on a touristy little pedestrian street. When I push open the door, my nostrils are assaulted by the scents of incense and patchouli? What is patchouli? It's probably not how you read that, but I want to know what it is. It's an oil. Patchouli oil. Alright. I wonder if I know how it smells like. Probably. The interior, which is lit by a few floor lamps, is long and narrow, with tiers of records along each side. The A side of Forever Change plays at a volume as subdued as the lighting. Rare records are displayed along the walls, high up, with prices best described as exorbitant. To tell the truth, I feel more like I've walked into a museum than a shop. Once my eyes have become accustomed to the gloom, I make out behind the counter an old man with half-moon glasses, long white hair, and a beard just as white and just as long. He's reading a battered paperback copy of the collected works of Allen Ginsberg. A roll-up burns at the corner of his mouth. I approach the counter and venture a shy hello. I have a strong feeling that I'm disturbing him. The old man doesn't even glance at me. I wave a hand, this time trying to say, "Hey, can you hear me?" "Gwen's coming," the man mutters into his beard. I'm seriously considering leaving when the bead curtains at the back of the shop separate with a jingle and a young woman with long blonde hair and a welcoming smile appears. "Sorry for taking so long. I was just feeding Rob's cats. Can I help you?" Either I can ask if she knows Ulysses, or I can bring up the record, hopefully without revealing too much. I could also decide that I'm wasting my time, make something up, and then slip away. "Ulysses." "Yes, it may sound a bit odd to you, but I'm looking for a friend of mine. A record store owner, Ulysses. Does there ring any bells?" Rob lifts his eyes from the book and stares at me. Long, brown, curly hair, dark-skinned, glasses. He would have been in London a few months ago. "You know, there are a lot of record collectors. I don't know all of them." She turns to the old man. "How about you, Rob? Rings any bells?" Rob relights his cigarette and takes a deep drag. I'm sorry, I hate people who smoke inside. Like, fuck all of you. It's at that moment I realize from the characteristic smell of the smoky exhales that his roll-up contains more than just tobacco. "No, sorry, doesn't ring any bells." We wave a lot of people passing through the shop. It's a pretty touristy area, you know? Usually it's Gwen who takes care of the customers. If she doesn't remember your friend, I doubt I could help. My memory isn't what it was. As if to prove his words Rob takes another deep pull on his joint and goes back to his book. Gwen shrugs, looking sorry. Insist? Are you sure? He specializes in psychedelic music. I'd be surprised if you didn't know him. He might have had a record to appraise with him. An acetate 7-inch white label. Really? It doesn't strike a chord? Oh, yes, you should have said that. Actually, someone did come by with a record like that. Gwen turns to Rob. It was in September when you were at Stonehenge with your hippie friends. To tell the truth, I'd completely forgotten about it. As Rob said, we have so many people coming through. And then the weirdos who think they're sitting on a gold mine and try to flog up a busted up umpteenth release of the Sgt. Pepper. There are shedloads of them. He was looking for information about his record, but what was weird was that he refused to put it on the record player. He told me it was the type of thing, if you have to ask to listen to it, you can't help me. Well, I can do much for him. Rob puts his book down on the counter, crushes on his roach, and gets out of his chair. His lethargy seems to dissipate instantly. Wait a sec, you're telling me that someone came to the shop with Crowley's legendary record and that you let him leave? Gwen blushes and stammers an excuse. How was I supposed to know that it was worth something? Rob turns to me and gazes at me intently. Do you know where the record is? I can give you a good price. It's not for sale. I'm sorry, it's not for sale. Ah, so it's you who actually has it, is it? Do you have it with you? Would you show it to me? I've realized that I've probably spoken too fast. I realized that I really should be careful with this information. I've already got enough people after me. No, sorry again. Well, from the sound of your voice, I don't see the point of insisting. But if there comes a time when you want to part with it, don't hesitate to come back to me, alright? My offer stands. I guarantee I'll give you a very good price. Wait a minute, you said it's a Crowley recording, right? There are plenty of stories going around. That's just the one that seems the most plausible to me. And it's the one that fits best with the supposed powers which people claim the record has. I've had this shop since the 60s. I've seen generations of musicians. That record comes up in conversation pretty often. As a record collector, I've always dreamed of getting my hands on it, if it really does exist. Could you tell me more about these so-called powers? Rob shrugs. Most of it is cock and ball stories. I've heard all sorts. Some people claim it's an amazing psychedelic trip, better than listening to the second disc of Electric Ladyland on Sandoz. Others say that they know someone who listened to the record and that the person had met God or aliens or leprechauns or whatever. To tell the truth, it's the historical value that interests me. It's in almost 40 years in this job, I've seen quite a few gems. Test pressings of Airplane, a complete collection of originals from Vertigo label, a factory-sealed copy of Wegmüller's Tarot. But that record, it's a holy grail of record collectors. One last question. If you were looking for information about the recording, who would you ask? Rob thinks for a moment. I'm not really sure. What about your old mate Art? Gwen turns to me. When he comes by the shop, you can't stop the two of them. I think he's the only person I know who's more of a rock history buff than Stony. Hearing the nickname Stony, Rob throws a murderous glance at Gwen, who seems to either not notice or not care. The only problem is that Art doesn't live in London anymore. When the house prices went up, he moved to Scotland. Art, could you give me his full name, please? Arthur Pullman. He worked for the BBC on the radio. I realize that this is probably the Pitman Enzo mentioned. As far as address, have we got it written down somewhere, Gwen? Gwen shrugs. I can look in the papers, but I can't promise anything. I've got plenty of time. That would be very kind of you. I'll do it right now. It might take a bit of time, though. If you saw the mess in the back of the shop... That's okay, I've got plenty of time. As she's about to go into the back of the store, Rob puts his hand on her shoulder to stop her. Hey, this is a record shop, not a detective agency. Sorry, but if you're not here to buy... I understand. Sorry, I won't bother you anymore. Thanks so much for your help. Gwen gives me a little wave and I leave the store. Sidecar Vinyls looks like a garage transformed into a record store. There are two Harley Davidsons parked near the entrance that I'm obliged to squeeze past, straddling some boxes of records to get to the counter which stretches across the back wall. The back of the store is windowless, and the cold light of the neon tubes creates a surprisingly sterile atmosphere. A small group of leather-clad people huddle across the bar with bottles and cans of beer in their hands. It's a radical change of ambiance compared to the subdued atmosphere and meticulous order of Rob and Gwen's store. I'm asking myself what I'm doing here when the person who I suppose must be the owner, a middle-aged man with a mustache, wearing a leather jacket with a Motorhead t-shirt, stretches across his round belly, urges me not to be scared and come closer, all with a barely disguised French accent. I decide to answer him in the language of Molière. Bonjour, vous parlez français? The guy seems caught off guard and starts to laugh after a moment of hesitation. He turns to the group and says in English on their behalf, Hey guys, say hello to the froggy. They turn to look at me and I hear a chorus of hellos along with a few bonjour mademoiselles from the bolder ones. Excuse the weirdos, it's meeting day for the Mayfair Motor Club, which I'm a member of. He holds out a hand, I shake it. Didier, nice to meet you. Tell me, what brings you here? I don't suppose you're here to discuss chokes and stroke volumes. I can't imagine Ulysse in this territory. There's very little chance that I'll get any useful information, but now that I'm here, I figure that I might as well ask a few questions. I'm looking for a friend who is researching a record. I know that he came to London, so I'm checking some of the record stores in case someone's seen him. He's a record store owner, too. Oh, as far as I'm concerned, records pay the bills. Harleys are my real passion. And I need a bit more info. What's your mate's name? Ulysse. Brown, curly hair, dark skin, glasses. Didier shakes his head. No, sorry, doesn't ring any bells. And the record he's researching? It's an acetate 7-inch white label? Didier smiles and lets out a triumphant, thundering aha. And you're going to tell me that you can't describe the music that's on it, aren't you? That's right, yeah. I've heard about the record. I've got an old pal who's been looking for it for years. I hadn't considered this possibility. Could it be someone I've already met? I could play the innocent and try to learn more. I could also be tough and shut down any attempts at negotiation. Candidly. Oh really? Who's that? Maybe I've already met them. Oh yes, most likely. He's obsessed by that record. He thinks that listening to it will literally change his life. His name is Jean-Luc, but he calls himself Eddie Black. Rings any bells? Seeing my face, Didier immediately realizes that yes, it does ring a bell. Yes, I hope he wasn't too crass with you. I promise you, he's a lovely guy, but as I said, he's obsessed by the record. I don't really know what to think. To be honest, on the one hand, he behaved like someone who was up to something. On the other, I don't have any real reason to accuse him of anything. I understand that maybe the circumstances of your meeting weren't ideal. But knowing Jean-Luc, I'm sure it was mostly awkwardness. We've known each other since we were kids, us two. I swear on my life he's a good guy. If you would let him listen to the record, it's out of the question. I'm sorry, but it's out of the question. Despite your pleading in his favor, I don't trust him. We don't know each other after all, and the record is very important to me. I'm sorry. It's fine, I understand. Well, I tried. It's the least I could do for my mate. If you ever change your mind, you know where to find me. One call to Jean-Luc, and he'll come running double time, that's for sure. Fine, I'll keep that in mind. Sorry to have disturbed you. Have a good afternoon. I turn around, clamber between the records and motorbikes again, and find myself back in the street. I walk quickly away from the store, hoping that, to cap it all after this, I won't be followed by a biker gang. There are light and movement when my steps lead me back to Alan's store this time. A few loafers loiter among the boxes, while a young girl focused on her listening, headphones firmly in place, moves the needle back and forth on a record player in one of the booths. The background music is folk, a little odd yet inspired, topped by a husky voice which murmurs in Spanish. The boxes seem to contain quite a lot of new releases, small presses of alternative bands. If they have a secondhand section, I don't know where it could be, which isn't exactly a good sign for my search. Behind the counter, the two sales clerks seem to be arguing. I move closer. Just because we've just opened up doesn't mean you can subject us to your wishy-washy folk music. It's way too late in the day for this. Right, Beth. First, it's not wishy-washy folk music. It's the latest record from Devondra Bonhart. It's a new import we just got in. And second, the guy is a genius. And as Alan once again forgot to put his alarm on, we could say that it still counts as the morning, right? Fine then, but I get to choose the next record. Deal? Deal, as long as it's not your pseudo-feminist second-rate Sonic Youth. Sleated Keeney's second-rate Sonic Youth is the rock record of the year. Well, either it's that or it's the new Franz Ferdinand, then nobody wins. We've been listening to it on repeat for the last month. We sell 3 copies every time we play it, Garrett. Do you like being able to pay your rent at the end of the month? Excuse me. Beth turns to me, beaming. Oh, sorry, excuse me. I had to interrupt my work for reasons of cultural divergence with my colleague, but he'll keep. The colleague rolls his eyes. What can I do for you? I'm looking for an Alan O'Reilly. What's it about? If it's about an unpaid bill or something like that, I'd better to come back tomorrow. I'm not sure the boss is in the right state. No, one of his friends sent me. Ah, I see. It's about a rare record. An acetate 7-inch white label. Does that ring any bells? Well, I know what an acetate is, but I'd need a bit more detail. Do you know the artist, the name of the track? Beth clearly has no idea what I'm talking about. I'm about to give up when the other employee, Garrett, comes over. Maybe we should send her to see the boss. Do you reckon? I'm not sure Alan's functioning well enough for any conversation longer than 3 words. Yes, but I overheard what you were saying. Alan was talking about that record not long ago with the geezer who came by the shop a few times, you know? Garrett turns to me. He was French, too. Dark-haired, dark-skinned, glasses? That's the one. He had an unusual name. Sounded like the James Joyce book, Ulysses. Garrett says the name English style. Oh, so you do say it in English. I wasn't wrong. So it's Ulysses in French, but Ulysses in English. Okay. Garrett says the name with name English style, pronouncing the final S. I correct him. Ulysse. Right, that's it. Do you know him? He's a friend, I guess you could say. I'm looking for him. It's best if you talk to the boss. They had some dealings together. They were old friends from what I understood. They knew each other back when the boss lived in Paris. Beth points to the left of the counter at a spiral staircase. He's upstairs in the second-hand section. Beth's pretty. As I climb the stairs, the music from the ground floor gradually fades, and when I reach the upper floor, there's a radically different atmosphere. The upper floor is engulfed in shadow, the lights off. The space lit only by a large window which runs the whole length of the wall. The room is a mess, with boxes and records piled up all over the place, which making a striking contrast with the skillfully created trendiness on the ground floor. The final notes of Velvet Underground's Sunday Morning play on the sound system and are followed by an English folk track from the same period, probably a cassette tape compilation. At the end of the room, behind a desk overflowing with paperwork, a large red-headed guy sits, or rather sprawls, in his chair, his head back and a t-shirt over his face. There's an empty beer mug in one hand, a tube of aspirin in the other, and a cup of steaming tea cooling on the desk. I approach the desk nervously and clear my throat. Without moving, Ellen growls something that sounds like, "Beth, I told you not today," but punctuated it with various obscenities. "It's not Beth. I've come from Patricia." My companion lifts the corner of the t-shirt, glances at me, lets out a sigh, and sits up in his chair. Even now, on what is apparently a bad day, he gives off a kind of calm force, which I find strangely attractive. Is it Patricia? How do you say that in Italian? I wonder.
Patrizia.
Yeah, it's Patricia. Okay. Patricia. Yes, it's her who sent me. He asks who I am in a strongly accented French, the R's rolled. "I'm Alice. I'm looking for Ulysse." Ulysse from Paris? Patricia's ex? Yes, that Ulysse. Yes, if you like, that Ulysse. Ellen seems to be having some trouble connecting the various facts of our rambling conversation. "And you are?" Alice, I told you, I'm also Ulysses' ex. I'm looking for him. Alan gestures me to wait. To summarize, you're Alice, Ulysses' ex, from before he moved to Paris, is that right? I nod. And you're looking for him. What can I do for you? Do you know where he is? Do you know where can I find him? Where I can find him, yes. No, not really. Alan rolls his eyes. Sorry, I just woke up and, well, we were a bit wasted last night. What are you doing this evening? I don't have anything planned at the moment. There's a gig in a pub not far away. We planned on going, Beth, Garrett, and I. Can we meet there, 6 p.m.? I need a little time to recover from my rough night. Ellen pulls the t-shirt back over his face, which used to mean that our conversation's over. I didn't even agree. When I go back down the stairs, Beth signals me to come over. So he had a rough night. I told you. He told me to join you at a pub this evening. Do you have the address? Oh, yes, the Fox and Sparrow. She notes the address down on a paper for me. So I'll see you there? Unless you want to stay here until closing time, it's up to you. We've got good music and a few magazines to pass the time if you haven't got anything better to do in the meanwhile. Ooh. For now, I've been to old record stores I wanted to see. Rather than mooching around for the rest of the afternoon or tucking myself away in a pub, I could stay here. Good idea, thanks for the offer. It'll give me a chance to catch up with what's new. They didn't give me a choice. Interesting. We've got listening booths. Help yourself. I thank Beth and head off in search of a few records to listen to. The Fox and Sparrow is the only two street away from Yard Sale Records, a typical London pub. From outside, I can't see Alan or his two employees. I suppose I might be a bit early, or perhaps they're a bit late. I consider waiting for them outside, but decide against it, so I head into the smoky warmth of the pub. The concert has already started. At the end of the room, on a platform, the band is playing a folk tune with a strange pagan sound. I order a drink and move closer to the stage. I allow the singer's incantation to lull me. She's completely immersed by her performance, which is punctuated by a large, bearded man who thumps on a big drum with a stick, and is accompanied by a few crystalline guitar notes and the low humming of a cello. I take a moment to consider today's inquiries. They weren't a huge success. At least I have a full name now, Arthur Pullman, and the destination, Scotland. It's like searching for a needle in a haystack. Anyway, all I can hope for is that Alan will have some answers for me. At least it seems as though I've managed to shake off Ava for the time being. Something tells me that it's just a temporary reprieve. Yeah, I'm dragged away from my musings by a hand on my shoulder. This band do a fantastic version of Willow's song. You know, the track from the soundtrack of The Wicker Man? I love their interpretation of it. I look up at my companion and realize that he must have measured at least 6'3". Something I hadn't noticed when he was slumped behind his desk. Do you like it? Yes, I like it a lot. He gestures that he hasn't heard me with the volume of the band. I hesitate to take his arm so that I can repeat into his ear. Seeing my hesitation, he leans down just as I'm standing up on my tiptoes, and in the confusion of the moment, I simply tell him, yes, it's great. Alan gives me a slightly embarrassed smile. Oh, okay. There's a moment of silence before I notice that I haven't released his arm. I let go a little hastily, hoping that I'm not blushing at my own awkwardness. When I take a step back, he puts a hand on my shoulder and says into my ear, "We've managed to find a table. Are you coming? We'll be able to talk more easily." Beth is waiting for us at the table on the other side of the pub, far enough from the stage for the music to be a reasonable level to talk without yelling. Garrett joins us, carrying 3 pints of beer, which teeter dangerously between his hands. He slides one over to Alan and another to Beth. Sorry, I didn't know what you were drinking. I raise my scarcely touched gin and tonic. I'm all set, thanks. Tonic. We're going to go over and listen. Can you keep our seats for after the set? Alan agrees with thumbs up. Garrett and Beth vanish into the crowd around the stage, and Alan turns to me. I'm sorry about earlier. I went to see Herman Dune in concert last night, and we had a few drinks after, and it got a little out of control. It doesn't happen as often as all that, but well, I'll admit that today has been a little difficult. Anyway, as you can see, I'm feeling much better tonight. Alan takes a long swig of his beer. So, have you seen Patricia lately? Is she okay? It's been ages since I was in touch with her. I'm not great with the telephone. She seemed pretty well. Oh, that's good. I lived in Paris for 2 years. I went from my last year of uni, then I got a job in a record shop in the 11e, and that's where I met her. Afterwards, I came back to the UK to start up my own shop and we managed to stay in touch. I spend a weekend in Paris, at least once a year, and she spends a weekend in London from time to time. That said, when I saw Ulysse come into the shop last month, I was a bit surprised. I bumped into him a few times when he was with Patty, a really great guy, but he lost touch when I moved to London. But we lost touch. Do you know where he is now? He told me he was going to keep tracking down his record. According to what Rob told me, his next step would be Scotland. Is that what he told you too? Alan raises a wary eyebrow. Rob? The guy at Strawberry Fields Records? Oh, Stoney! I didn't know Ulysse had gone to see him. But thinking about it, it's not a bad idea. His face is so funny. But thinking about it, it's not a bad idea. He's been on the scene for such a long time. There was a talk of him meeting an Arthur Pullman. Does that mean anything to you? Alan shrugs. No, nothing at all, sorry. Hell, that doesn't help me much. Scotland's pretty big. We're interrupted by Beth, who's just sat down next to me on the bench seat. Glasgow. Pardon? Your bloke, Ulysse, he said he was heading for Glasgow. Beth crosses her arms, a mischievous smile on her lips. Luckily, there's someone who's still got a memory on the team. Alan sits up in his chair, a glimmer of understanding suddenly on his face. Oh yes, that's right. Now we come to mention it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I gave him the address of my old mate Yorgos. How do you not remember that? He works in a kind... Okay, I shouldn't say that. I have very poor memory. Okay, that wasn't fair. He could not remember that. He works in a kind of trendy bar/restaurant in the center of Glasgow, the Archery. Beth lifts her empty glass sadly. Hey, shall we get another drink? Will you help me, Alice? Alan, can you keep the table, please? Shouldn't we wait for Garrett? I think Garrett's, occupied. His boyfriend just got here. Beth glances over at the other end of the other side of the bar, and there's Garrett stationed near the stage, discreetly holding hands with a young bearded man. Don't move, Alice, I'll go. Beth puts her hand on his shoulder to stop him from rising. No, stay here, please. I need some girl talk with Alice. I go over to the bar with Beth. You said Ulysse was in Glasgow? Yes, that's what he said when he stopped by the last time. Sorry for buttholing you like this, but I wanted to talk to you about something else. Beth glances over my shoulder at our table. I think the boss fancies you. Like, the thing is, I think I'm looking for my ex, and that I think I might have already fucked it up by, like, sleeping with Patricia, but I feel like that it's possible for me to get back with him, unless I am actually going to be transported into my reality to Jean-Baptiste, but I doubt that. So, but I also I'm not into the guy, so get defensive. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested. Oh, fine, I understand. Sorry if I'm out of line. Beth continues her pitch regardless, completely oblivious to my misgivings. Alan probably told you that he moved to England to set up his own shop, but actually, he left Paris to be with his missus. Unfortunately, they split up a few months ago. It was pretty messy. Since then, he's been going through a rough time. We joke about him not being able to wake up to open the shop, but honestly, he's been in a bad way since the breakup. It really shook him up. Don't make it about, like, I can fix... Well, it's not I can fix him. Or I guess it is. Yeah, don't make it like an I can fix him situation. When I saw him come downstairs earlier, all showered and perfumed, well, anyway, looking very dapper despite the hangover, I thought to myself that perhaps you were here for a reason. Don't. I get the message. Leave it there. Fine, the ball's in your court, as they say. The overworked barman finally decides to come and take our order. We order, I manage to pay for my round despite Beth's objections, and we go back to our table. We chat for a while. I go back over to the stage to watch the end of the concert. We order a last drink. Alan tells me funny stories about his life in Paris and London. He tells me about how he met Elise. I feel a twinge of sadness. I recall the good years we had together with a strange sense of déjà vu. Or more like déjà vu? Like I'd already lived this, which I couldn't explain to myself. Alan's a really good guy. I get the feeling that hiding beneath the imposing physique and the Canadian lumberjack exterior, there's a sensitive child. I think that if the circumstances allow it, we could easily become friends. We're in the middle of a lively discussion about the different stages of the career of Miles Davis when the bell rings for last orders and closing time. I don't think it'll be long before they kick us out. Shall I walk you back to your hotel? I take a moment to think about my answer. Either Alan's extremely respectful for someone who's supposed to fancy me, or Beth has misread his behavior. I take the initiative myself and be more forward. Whatever I decide, I can't see myself going back to my hotel on my own, not after the scare I had the night before last or my conversation with Ava in the buffet car. I would like to go to the hotel. I do think it's time to be getting back. Thanks for a great evening. Alan repeats his... Okay, because I thought, like, I was wondering what the initiative thing was. I was like, oh god, please don't tell me, like, you walk alone. That's not safe. Alan repeats his offer to walk me back, and I accept gratefully. We say goodbye, go out of the pub, and head off in different directions. We continue to talk about music on the way, then when we reach the hotel, which is only a few minutes walk from the pub, we exchange numbers and promise to stay in touch, Alan and I. I go up to my room, and after the day's adventures, I slip easily into the arms of Morpheus. When I wake the next morning, I have a fairly clear plan of battle. I think I've collected all the information that I can here in London. I've got a name, Arthur Pullman, and a place, Glasgow. Even Alan, who already knew Ulysses and who'd put him up for a few days, wasn't able to be more precise. All I can do is jump on a train and cross my fingers that the trail doesn't dry up. And if the Arthur Pullman is truly a specialist in that record, perhaps he'll be able to give me some answers. First, I jump into the shower, then I chose some fresh clothes. Something tells me that there's a strong possibility that Ava and her henchmen are watching the stations. So I chose an outfit as different as possible from the one I was wearing when I arrived in London to reduce the risk of being recognized if needed. In the same vein, I decided to put my hair up, which I rarely do usually. I gather my things and leave the room en route for the station.